There's a TikTok going around, which is a clip of David Foster and Katherine McPhee. They're at some sort of concert hall doing a singing event or whatever. And they show her at American Idol. And she kind of like makes a reference to her body at that time. She's like, I was a lot chubbier then, or I was chubby then. And David Foster goes, you were fat. He literally says, you were fat. Yes. Yes.
Well.
This is a long-awaited day, Chandler. This deep dive we're about to embark on together.
Yes, Lauren. This is a long-awaited, highly contested, demanded deep dive. And I think actually deep dive is the wrong classification. What you have joined me in today and what you are going to witness is actually the trial of David Foster.
Except we didn't bring a jury. We just brought an executioner.
There will be no two sides of this argument.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I also am just going to start off this by saying that I attempted to rewatch the David Foster Off the Record documentary that we watched years ago, and that's what really turned us on to how terrible he is.
So true.
And I couldn't even get through it. I was just planning on having it in the background while I was working, and I could not listen to that man for one more minute, and I had to turn it off. So
I feel like just in our own defense, because this feels like such a, like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing a deep dive on David Foster? He's just a music producer. I do feel like the culture has foisted David Foster and his personality and his personal life onto us, like in the form of him being on various reality shows, in the form of his documentary on Netflix.
Right. The Foster sisters.
It's not like he's just behind the scenes with Celine Dion, No, he's like, he steps out into the limelight and exposes his personal life. And I feel like it's worth an examination of what narratives we've been fed and what's really going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And once again, another reason why this isn't a deep dive is because I actually don't care to take you through his professional accomplishments. I'll have a few notes on those, but this is actually just a deep dive on his crimes against women. And that's it. His accolades and, the way he's produced so many amazing stars cannot absolve him of his crimes.
One of my favorite things about David Foster is, so I listened to World's First Podcast hosted by his daughters, Erin and Sarah, who I really adore. And one of my favorite things that they've ever said is like, it was so annoying to them and also to him that he so quickly became Yolanda Hadid's husband or Yolanda Foster's husband or Yolanda Foster's ex-husband. Like he was a guy who's the husband of a Real Housewife that really became how he was known across America. And I just find that to be cosmic justice,
Oh, yes. I mean, by a show of hands, class, who had heard of David Foster until Yolanda Hadid stepped out into the Real Housewives scene?
Until that golden-skinned platinum beauty came across our silver screens. Who the fuck we didn't know who David Foster was. I mean, all we knew was we were trying to get like the mom driving us home from school to turn off Josh Groban. That's as close as we came to David Foster.
Or the sister that you shared a Jack and Jill bathroom with who loved to sing along to Josh Groban. You love Josh Groban. Let's not pretend. Be honest.
I shouldn't play it cool. There was a time, Chandler, when Josh Groban gave me some stirrings, okay? You raised me up. I felt the spirit.
Or was he your sexual awakening?
Yeah. You know what? There was a time, Chandler, when I would think that there were stirrings.
Have you ever been turned on by Josh Groban?
Body, listening to Josh Groban. It's true.
Yes, literally, I think I only knew about Josh Groban because you love Josh Groban. I think that's really sweet about you. I think, always had a taste for really annoying stuff like that.
The thing is I think 12, 13, yes, I had a moment with Josh Groban, but then I quickly came to realize that Josh Groban was pop.
Sure.
It wasn't highbrow. Okay. We weren't listening to Aria.
It was lowbrow, highbrow.
It was, yeah, exactly. It was lowbrow, highbrow. I very quickly, did away with the Josh Groban in my personal my personal Spotify catalog.
Well, thank goodness, because, it's really proved to help you succeed and get to be the podcaster that you are today. Thank goodness you only stuck to highbrow stuff since then.
Yeah, it's so true, honestly. Thank you, Chandler, for pointing that out.
In my research and thinking about what I wanted to say today, I realized that if, the stars ever align and, our podcast ever gets up off the ground, we're never going to be able to go on the world's first podcast because we will have done a trial and, execution of their father.
So the thing is, by the time, if that happens ever, by the time that happens and we do our big crossover, this episode will be deleted. Any negative mention of David Foster will be deleted. We will maybe do a David Foster appreciation episode.
We will be like, we love Katherine McPhee's music. We're obsessed with Katherine McPhee.
Let's walk everyone through the catalog, okay, from Andrea Bocelli to Celine Dion.
We're doing a deep dive of the American Idol season with Katherine McPhee.
Exactly.
We just can't get enough. Anyway.
And the crowning achievements of, one of the greatest contributors to American music, David Foster, who happens to have been married to Yolanda Foster. Before we have to put on that kind of bullshit show, we can tell the truth, Chandler, on this podcast.
Yeah. At least being small means that we can be truth tellers. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with just a little quick bio about who David Foster is, his early life, but it's not super critical. David Foster was born in November in Canada. Did you know he was Canadian?
I did know he was Canadian. I did not know that he was a fall baby. Beautiful.
Fall baby, Lauren. He's won 16 Grammy Awards and had 47 nominations. That's quite a lot.
Yeah, I can for sure.
I can recognize that. But he then, moved on to being a composer and producer, and he has nearly 100 hit singles, which also I can understand that. I can recognize that. So he worked with the likes of Barbra Streisand, Earth, Wind and Fire, Alice Cooper, Rod Stewart, Donna Summer, Olivia Newton-John, Celine Dion, Andrea Bocelli. If you don't know who Andrea Bocelli is, he's the man who was able to sing at both of the Kardashian weddings. That's where he got his start.
Andrea Bocelli?
Yeah, just kidding.
I was like, who is Andrea Bocelli?
Sorry, Andrea
Bocelli.
Andrea Bocelli. Anyway, he's not singing at my wedding. I don't give a fuck how his name is pronounced. Josh Groban, like we, waxed on about earlier. Toni Braxton, Madonna, Jennifer Lopez, Mary J. Blige, Christina Aguilera, Kenny Rogers, Kenny Loggins, Kenny G, and Michael Bublé, who Lauren likes to listen to while she's, having romantic encounters with her husband.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Bublé. we pour some bubbly, we put on that bublé, and Kagan knows what time it is. Exactly.
Anyway,
you have a live cam into my bedroom?
Wow. I do actually. I've got a Ring camera positioned there. Another big fact about him, and I think this is worth noting because we are truth tellers, his estimated worth is $150 million.
I can see why the panties started dropping, for sure.
Okay, proceed. Lauren. So he has been married 5 times and is truly at the head of a crazy Hollywood family tree. Like he is connected through his different marriages and through the children of those marriages and who they've married and blah, blah, blah. He is in a massive Hollywood family tree. And it's pretty fascinating. And we'll probably post an image of this with like our teaser video or whatever. But
so he's a
because it's
baby.
Worth noting.
Or is he the father of the family tree?
He is like this. He has spawned a lineage of Nepo babies.
Oh, that's right. Because I don't think he came from, I think he came from humble backgrounds.
Humble. And the other interesting thing is that David has all sisters, which I think was another sort of head scratcher because I think one would think that if you have all sisters and that, you potentially grow up around women, hopefully know how to treat women well. You might respect them. One might think. Let's start by just talking about his children. So he has 6 children, all right?
Okay.
Allison Jones, who he had when he was in his 20s, she was placed for adoption. Amy Foster, who is from his first marriage to BJ Cook, which we'll get into. Amy is a successful songwriter. She wrote Haven't Met You Yet and Home by Michael Bublé, as well as songs for Destiny's Child, Josh Groban, and Andrea Bocelli.
Andrea Bocelli. Impressive. Love it.
Thank you. I said it right. Okay. And then he has Sarah, who we know, know and love. Who's the daughter of Rebecca Dyer, wife number 2. Aaron as well. Rebecca Dyer is her mom, and Jordan, who's also the
Jordy Foss.
Yeah. And then there is Ren, whose mom is Katherine McPhee. Okay.
Okay. So those are
his biological. Those are his biological children. Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. So, and the stepchildren are Brandon and Brody Jenner from when he was married to Linda Thompson, and also the Hadid children, Gigi, Bella, and Anwar when he was married to Yolanda.
And the supermodel Anwar Hadid.
Are we calling him a supermodel?
That was the joke.
I was like, let me do the truth telling, okay?
Remember how Yolanda was trying to say that like Anwar was a a major supermodel, or just kind of was like also trying to get his modeling career off the ground?
Look, that man has got enough going on with his anti-vax bullshit.
It's a valiant effort by a mom just that was seeing the best in her son. Anyway, please continue.
Okay, so let's continue. So I think we should mention that David is very open about the failings of his marriages, and he has described himself as a quote unquote runner in the documentary. Really? Yeah, he's admitted that he's out the door as soon as problems arise in his relationships. He said, quote, "It's more like, hey, there's a shiny thing over there. This is not working, so it looks a lot better to me over there." End quote.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
yes.
It sounds like this guy just likes to have weddings and likes romance.
He's obsessed with planning weddings.
He actually has zero interest sticking with someone during the hard times. I mean, that's saying that when things get tough, you're gone. That's insane. That's an insane thing to say. That's like the opposite of marriage.
Well, and I think what is gross about that admission, it's like maybe you could disguise it as, oh, he's self-aware. He gets it. He knows he has problems. But I think when you see that someone is now in their 70s and this is just like he seems to be at peace with the fact that he's a runner, I suppose. And when asked about his marriage to Katherine McPhee and if he was tired of running, he said, "I'm not tired of running. No, but I'm very happy where I am."
Yeah, I think Katherine McPhee is kind of like the Robin to Cody.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Who kind of came at the tail end and who does everything in her power to make his life perfect. Mm-hmm. And as long as she doesn't like fall ill and no calamity, no calamity befalls them, then I think that they'll proceed.
Katherine McPhee needs to be dousing herself in bug spray every single day because I swear to God, if a tick lands on her and gives her Lyme disease,
this marriage
is gone. It's over. It's over.
Yeah,
it's literally over. What I think though, this actually should be a public warning to her. Please be dousing yourself in off or whatever bug spray.
We should Amazon some.
They should do a sponsorship for her. She should be she should be sponsored for bug spray.
She really is. Like, my financial future depends on me using this bug spray and not getting Lyme disease, everyone. And so far it's worked. I'm in brilliant health. I can still dress up and go to all the parties and events. I'm not having to go to doctor's appointments. I still can go on all the vacations as a smiling trophy wife. You guys, Deet has really worked for me. So please use my code 10% off. Katherine McPhee really should be the spokesperson.
Literally, there's a brand sponsorship that's so perfect.
I mean, sorry, I know I'm interrupting a lot, but don't you remember that from Yolanda's memoir that she was saying like, the second she couldn't be the smiling trophy wife at all the events,
his wingman,
like, he basically just left her in the dust. So
we will get to that because, I mean, her book, believe me, I just remember reading it on a plane being torn to pieces by her story and mostly by David Foster's treatment of her.
I think if people have thought they felt the spirit reading the Book of Mormon, they should really try reading Believe Me.
Yeah. Or if you think Josh Groban has done it for you.
Yeah.
Believe Me.
I mean, read Believe Me. Mm-hmm. The lessons this woman has to impart, gorgeous.
Gorgeous. What I want to say, though, is to just double click on what you just said about, what Yolanda wrote about in her book. I think it is less that he is a runner. I think it is more that the minute that he is no longer treated like a king, and like you're saying, the minute that he is no longer like the home situation is not perfect and he is not the king of the house who is just catered to by his wife, it's no longer working for him. He does not view monogamy as thick and thin, good times and bad times, richer or poorer.
Right.
It is how if I'm not King David, being served lemon chicken, then this is no longer working for me.
Well, there's that famous scene in Beverly Hills where Yolanda's like, David is a king in my house. They show her making dinner and she makes almost, I think, like 2 of things in case one thing doesn't go well. Right. Like everything has to be perfect for David. Well, and she's in lingerie cooking.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
A lot of other women corroborate this tale. So let's get into it.
Okay, please.
So his first marriage number 1, was to musician BJ Cook. She was his bandmate in Skylark, your favorite band. And both David and BJ had already had 1 daughter each. If you'll remember, he had Allison Foster from a previous relationship. And together they had Amy. And Amy is the one who has written those Michael Bublé songs. They were together for a long time until he split with her. And there does seem to be some overlap with his relationship with Rebecca Dyer, who is the mother of Sarah, Jordan, and Aaron. For example, Sarah was born in 1981, and they didn't officially split up, him and BJ, until 1981. some overlap
Oh, wow.
to create a
Okay.
baby.
That's a little bit of a conflict. So Rebecca was potentially the other woman for his first
Mhm.
marriage.
Yeah.
Or definitely
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I haven't heard the girls talk about that on the pod. And I hear a lot about Rebecca, and Rebecca just seems fantastic.
She seems fantastic.
Yeah. One thing that I love about Rebecca, she talks a lot about how plant medicine has like completely changed her life.
Really?
And Sarah Foster is like very anti doing any sort of drugs, is like so barely drinks, is very straight laced. So she just kind of said that like growing up around all these like rich kids who were doing stuff, it was just so unattractive to her, and she didn't want to be like that. And so she barely drank ever. Anyway, didn't party. So she said it was like so jarring and alarming to her when her mom was suddenly like in her 60s going to these like people's homes and like doing plant medicine. She's like, you're going to people's houses doing drugs? But what's interesting about it is she talks about how her mom, before her experience with plant medicine, or her experiences, was really like there was a lot of negativity surrounding David, like a ton. And it just created so much ire within their family, right?
Right.
And uncomfortability. And she said, you know, she didn't want to be around them, all that stuff, a lot of negativity. Rebecca didn't want to be around Kat and David. And then I guess post plant medicine, Rebecca is like so enlightened. She said that it was almost like jarring for everyone else how relaxed and cool with everything and like healed she had become. Where like she describes one thing where I guess David and Kat showed up on Rebecca's doorstep, and Rebecca had like her hair was in rollers, and she was like, oh, come in. Like, sorry, I'm, you know, still getting ready. Just like so comfortable in her own skin, so accepting. So anyway, kind of a cool endorsement of the power of plant medicine, everyone.
And you know what? David Foster should also be schlepping the power of plant medicine because it's able to heal his ex-wives from the pain that he's caused them.
David Foster,
another sponsor,
paying for her ceremonies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And I think we should get into why she needed so much healing, Lauren.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So Rebecca and David had 3 daughters, Erin, Sarah, Jordan. David was absolutely terrible and awful. We don't have very many details, but he left Rebecca for another woman when they had 3 very young daughters, when all the children were very young. Basically, it says that, you know, he was only with Rebecca from 1982 to 1986, but then him and Linda weren't married until 1991. So there must have been some time.
I feel like I just hear the way they refer to Linda as like, my dad had an affair and then he ended up moving in with the other woman.
Right.
And like then she had sons. So I feel like that was the next person. Like he is definitely a serial monogamist.
Right.
It sounds like.
Baby Jordan was only 7 months old when he left.
What the
And I think the other girls were
F?
like 3 and 4. So this is Sarah Foster speaking. And so I'm going to read this to you. On the podcast Sibling Revelry, where it's with Kate Hudson and her brother Oliver, Sarah went on and she talked about struggling following her parents' divorce, especially seeing David dote on stepsons Brandon and Brody Jenner after he married Linda Thompson, who then became his 3rd wife. She said, our dad was raising other children. He wasn't raising us. He was raising Brandon and Brody. I was like dealing with my whole emotional turmoil, which was watching my father raise other children. That was the thing that kept me up at night. It's hard as a kid looking at your step siblings and asking why they each have 3 cars when we didn't. By the way, it's a lot worse leaving a woman with a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 8-month-old than leaving a woman with Lyme disease.
Well, first of all, they fucking hate Yolanda.
Yeah.
So they really don't like Yolanda. They obviously don't get into it, but a lot is left unsaid and you can read between the lines. And it's true. I mean, that's absolutely true. Like leaving 3 young children, it's horrific. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's inexcusable. It's egregious. It's obviously so terrible because you're not just impacting one person's life, but 4 people's lives. You're the mother
Forever.
and then her 3 children or your 3 children. And also you can really hear the impact that this has had on these girls when you listen to their podcasts. Like, they have a lot of trauma from that experience.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole reason Sarah never got married, is because she says, like, for me, if I never got married, I would never get divorced. Like, and to her, you know, being the child of divorce, a traumatic divorce, not a Gwyneth divorce, was really, really traumatic.
Well, and it sounds like she kind of alludes to the different treatment, potentially financially. Maybe reading between the lines, they struggled financially a little bit more, didn't have what their step siblings had, who weren't even his like biological kids. Like that would be really aggravating.
Yeah, and I think that it's so interesting because the way they talk about it, Rebecca was like more of a single mom than having any
Absolutely.
sort of active co-parent. And yeah, there was a
Mhm.
huge financial disparity.
We're going to keep returning to some of Aaron's thoughts and their kids, but
Okay.
let's talk a little bit about Linda Thompson. You know, she had a crazy life, had, and she's still with us. Like, she was with Elvis, if you'll remember. So David was the stepfather to Brandon and Brody Jenner. Their father is obviously Caitlyn Jenner. And David raised Brandon and Brody since Caitlyn, Bruce, was already with Kris Jenner and, you know, wasn't really present, was fully immersed in, you know, being a stepdad and the Kardashian lives, and was having his own kids with Kris.
If memory serves, there was a period where Caitlyn Jenner left Linda in order to transition, right?
Right.
And
yes.
I don't know if that was, I think the children were born and they were young, and that's when Caitlyn left. And then obviously Caitlyn decided not to transition and then ended up marrying Kris later.
Right. I forgot about that.
So yeah, that was kind of what was going on behind the scenes.
I didn't know this, but, you know, Brandon Jenner really considers David Foster his dad or his father.
Oh, really? Okay.
He says David Foster, quote, was really my father. He's the man who slept in the master bedroom during our childhoods. He was there for most everything. Although Bruce, now Caitlyn, was the one who taught me how to ride a bike. I think it's definitely kind of a jab.
It's just interesting to consider, like, what it would have been like to be Aaron and Sarah and Jordan, and to have their dad literally just like being the dad to other kids,
Oh,
and
it would have
not
been awful
to them. That's
awful,
so traumatic. And then also consider, like, for the Jenner kids, their dad, it's like at least they had a father figure because their father had kind of abandoned them for a while. Yeah, it's just crazy.
I mean, I think that would be so emotionally scarring, especially to be in a Hollywood situation where everyone's really wealthy, where you are, you know, your dad is famous. You know, he's not just like some deadbeat who's choosing this other family.
Right. Like, way more traumatic for Aaron and Sarah and Jordan as compared to Brandon and Brody, who they had a father figure. They were in the, you know, they had all the wealth, they had all the resources, but then, you know, they had their own trauma, which was seeing Bruce go and have a family, and now Caitlyn have a family with Kris. And there was a lot of abandonment issues from those kids towards Caitlyn. So a trail of tears by these men.
Literally,
men
like,
and women.
Mostly men. So in 2016, Linda Thompson released a memoir called A Thing Called Life. In her book, she revealed that David Foster was very jealous of her exes, and he expected, you know, his wife to cater to him. And this is where I really got the impression that he really is a king and he needs to be treated like one. She writes, quote, at times he had an expectation that I was there to serve and take care of him, to make beds and do housework. He really and truly wanted to be treated like a king, not like a husband or father, which speaks volumes about what he was like to live with, as lovable as he could be. You're not saying to David Foster, hey, can you do bedtime tonight? I'm pretty tired.
Right, exactly. This is not a partner. This is not someone who's in life with you. This is someone, and I think that for a lot of really wealthy guys, that's the deal. If you decide to sign up for a life with them, and they've already built everything and they don't see you as a true partner, they really see you as like their romantic partner, but also like their like low-key maid. Like you're
house
there
manager.
to serve them.
Yeah. House manager / sex partner.
Right. Which honestly, it's not a terrible deal. Okay. Linda looked like she was having a pretty decent life if you watched Princess of Malibu.
You know, if you know that that's the deal and that doesn't bother you, who am I to say whatever? But you know, Lauren, David would get really upset when Elvis was brought up. So she said that she saw Foster's insane jealousy of the memory of Elvis and who Elvis was. But David clapped back and he said in Vanity Fair, it wasn't jealousy. I just got tired of having a TV crew in our house every year on the anniversary of his death and hearing my wife declare him the love of her life. Which is kind of funny.
Oh my God. Wait, that's actually hilarious. Mic drop. And to be honest with you, I really feel like this is the one time on this episode that I'm going to be Team David, because I feel like if you hear Linda Thompson talk, and if you, I didn't read her memoir, but I feel like I got the gist of it by reading all the magazine articles. It was all about Elvis. Like, her life is about having dated Elvis. That's her claim to fame. David Foster is a footnote. The father of her children is a footnote. Caitlyn Jenner is a footnote. It's all about the 9-month relationship she had with
Right.
Elvis, or however long it was.
So just to quickly follow up with a few more details about Aaron and Sarah. Sarah says that her dad really instilled the importance of hard work into her, thanks to his adage, I'm rich, you're poor. Aaron says she obviously felt a lot of conflict towards David, but not as much towards her step-siblings, I guess. She said, mine was less resentment towards them. It was more like, we're misunderstood out in the world because we have this fake spoiled lifestyle, but we're not even really allowed to be a part of it. So we get all the backlash for it, but we don't actually get the benefits. And I think when you're 15, you don't have the maturity to understand that them having a spoiled lifestyle is not going to serve them well. You're just like, why do they have all these things and I don't, and my dad's the one giving it to them?
I think that listening to them talk, it's so interesting because they clearly have had, they don't seem like people who just have had everything handed to them. And I think that there is something really cool about how accomplished they are, how much they've done. And I think that it kind of speaks to the fact that they didn't have, it sounds like, a credit card they could just charge everything to.
I think this is a Hollywood experience that you and I are really fascinated by. If you remember our conversation about Austin Swift, it's the people, and maybe that's not a perfect comparison, but I think we're really captivated by the life and the logistics of people who are fully in the Hollywood or the A-lister sphere, but maybe don't have all of the perks of it.
Right.
Don't have actually carte blanche, money or whatever, and privilege and access to things, but at the same time are running with that crowd.
Yeah. The Rob Kardashians of the world, the Austin Swifts, the parents of.
Right.
I'm so fascinated by how the money trickles across and up and down from the mega stars. And it sounds like it didn't trickle that much toward Aaron and Sarah. And also another fascinating thing about hearing them talk, it's it's clear that they were raised in this environment. So in the same way that they were, Brandon and Brody, they're step brothers, had this crazy lavish life. They clearly have so many friends who have crazy wealth. In comparison to them, it's kind of, I don't know, the way they talk, it's they're clearly very well-off, wealthy women, but in their heads, given their friends, they don't talk like they are. It doesn't sound like they regard themselves that way at all, which is just another interesting thing.
I think is another reason why we love them is because they have a real strong thread of relatability, despite being also part of the Hollywood elites. I mean, as well, I don't know if anyone has watched Almost Famous, but their show, that show is actually that's the whole kind of shtick of it. Okay, let's get into though Yolanda Hadid. And he marries Yolanda Hadid in 2011, and this, is maybe his most high profile marriage. He became stepfather to Gigi, Bella, and Anwar. Their lives were thrust into the spotlight when she joined Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, a year after they got married in 2012. And he really despised being on the reality TV series. And he said, quote, the Beverly Hills Housewives was just kind of a nightmare for me and something that I really wish I hadn't been a part of. Which I think goes back to your point about how he became known as Yolanda Hadid's husband.
Yeah.
Okay, so while married, Yolanda gets diagnosed with Lyme disease, and this really becomes a huge strain on their marriage. This becomes a huge plot line in Beverly Hills. And I think I'm going to play a few audio clips of Yolanda talking about it and David talking about it. And this first one is when he was kind of caught on camera doubting kind of his relationship and talking about how bad it was. Any Beverly Hills people, you'll remember that Yolanda has this rooftop party or something, and the housewives are there to support her. But basically, him and his friend sit down, and his friend said, "How have you been?" The friend says, "I just wanted to get back to the way they were when you first got together." And David goes, "How's that going to happen?"
Yeah.
And his friend says, "It's going to happen," and he just kind of doesn't know. I think it's obviously kind of a hot mic moment. That's it's not like he says anything crazy negative, but it's just it's a real snapshot into how he was feeling and how he just kind of had given up, by that point.
People are fallible, but I will say there's something about his response that's all about it sounds like it's kind of him lamenting the good times being over instead of it she's really sick or she's we're just really hoping she can get better. It's this is all about how this illness has impacted our fun and our lifestyle. It sounds like that's the tone.
100%. And that is what I think we see through, how she talks about him in her book. And the next clip I'm going to play for you, it is all about how this is actually making David's life worse. It's not about Yolanda being really sick. It's worth noting that I don't think that any of the Foster sisters believe that she had Lyme disease.
Oh,
I don't
really?
think that they, I think it's a little telling with Sarah's quote about it's a lot worse to leave, a woman with 3 kids than a woman with Lyme disease. Yeah, I don't think they believe her. Let me play this.
David has lost his wingman. He married a woman that was a social butterfly, always out and doing. And then all of a sudden, I got sick and, the shell of the woman I used to be. So, yes, he gets impatient.
Anyway.
It's so interesting that they don't think it's real. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm dying.
I mean, and I guess that might be some unconfirmed. Like, I'm sure they've never said on their podcast, this is the episode where we don't believe that Yolanda has Lyme disease. But yeah, I don't think they just believe her.
The only things that I've heard that allude to Yolanda are basically them saying that he's had wives that are much more age appropriate for him that have treated them a lot worse. Mm-hmm. And so they're not like they like Katherine because at least she's nice to them, essentially.
Right. Interesting. A little bit more on the family not believing that Yolanda has Lyme disease. The public thinks that they got divorced, you and me, because he didn't want to deal with her illness. David always says, he says, we did not get a divorce because of her illness. It's because of another reason that I will never share. Mm-hmm. Which makes me think, I was just ruminating on this and like, is that reason that he doesn't even believe her in the first place, that she was sick? So of course it doesn't have to do with her illness.
It was another reason entirely different, which is that she was faking her Lyme disease.
Yes, that there was no illness. This is a tweet that I think is pretty funny. Not funny, actually. This is a tweet that's pretty dark. I can't stop thinking about how the divorce rate for men leaving their really sick wives is so high that nurses are taught to warn women patients when they get diagnosed with a serious illness.
Yeah, gruesome.
So I think this Reddit comment is pretty astute. It says, David likes young, flawless women. Side note, in her book, she talks about how, quote, David liked her really skinny. So, sorry, back to this quote. While Yolanda wasn't young, she was drop dead gorgeous, fit, and catered to his every need. Then she got sick. He completely checked out and didn't want to deal with it. She took out her implants. She was very evidently sickly. He left her, and now he's with Katherine McPhee, who's like 30 years younger than him. David was always going to David. Her getting sick just sped up the inevitable.
Yeah, it's so true. It's honestly so true. There's a TikTok going around, which is a clip of David Foster and Katherine McPhee. They're doing some sort of they're at some sort of concert hall doing a singing event or whatever. And this is recent. And they show her at American Idol doing something. And she kind of makes a reference to her body at that time. She's like, I was a lot chubbier then, or I was chubby then. And David Foster goes, you were fat.
We met 17, almost 18 years ago when I was a little chubby and cheerful contestant on American Idol. Look at me smiling.
Oh yeah.
So happy.
You were fat.
I was a little chubby, okay?
Yeah, it's true.
I was just young.
He literally says, you were fat. Yes. Yes.
I'm going to throw up.
I think it really just goes to show the way he views women.
Yes.
And the way he thinks it's okay to talk about women. Because if he can say that in front of a crowd about his wife, what does he feel like it's appropriate to say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's vile. Let's get into his relationship with Katherine McPhee, because she was giving an interview talking about how they met and, eventually got together. And I think there's some fascinating tidbits in there. He basically, the long story short of it is that he kind of always told her that he was into her.
Interesting.
And I guess, do you want me to play the audio or do you want me to just tell it to you? Okay. So just a little blurb. Katherine and David met in 2006 when she was 22 and he was 57. He was literally born the same year as her father, but they didn't get married until 2019. So it's not like they met and then they got together immediately after that. It was actually kind of a slow burn.
Well, how did you guys meet and how did you I love people's love stories. How did you know that each other was the one?
But I met him when I was a contestant on American Idol.
Oh, you did?
I did. I was
that.
Yeah. That season, if you remember how massive American Idol was at that point, it was just it was, they gave us our own security.
Pause really quick. You're seeing footage of her in this video and she is totally normal.
Yeah.
Her body is
I think
totally
that's what
normal.
people were so enraged about too, is she looked totally normal.
Our own security guards to go to the malls to shop. Every week we would go, and it was so unnecessary, but that's how important they thought that the show was. And if Steven Spielberg is watching American Idol every week, it was pretty important at that time. It was pretty major. So I say that because they had amazing guests every week. Like we had Stevie Wonder and Rod Stewart and Andrea Bocelli and David Foster. And I remember calling my mom and saying, "You're never going to believe who's the guest mentors this week." And, my mom was a huge Andrea Bocelli fan. And so I grew up like listening to all his music. And then I said, the producer, David Foster. And I was like, I don't know who he is. And she's like, Katherine,
David Foster.
David freaking Foster.
Like, David Foster, you know who David Foster is. And I was like, okay. So I grew up idolizing Celine. And that was one of the many people that he like, she was already, he'll credit her because he's always good at giving credit where credit's due, but he'll say that Celine was already famous in Canada, but he brought her down to America and made her first album with her. And so I was obsessed with Celine, obsessed with not Mariah Carey, well, her too, but he didn't produce her. And the Whitney Houston Bodyguard soundtrack. I mean, he did like everything that I loved. So anyway, that was when I first met him. But of course, it wasn't like, I was very young and we have a huge age difference. And so I was certainly not, all I was thinking about was the competition and Andrea Bocelli and getting through that week. But it was really cool because when I came off the show, I came in second, I didn't win, but I got signed to RCA and they had me, the big song that I sang on Idol was Somewhere Over the Rainbow that Simon picked for me. He had like said, this is a song that Kat's going to sing, And so RCA had hired David. So I remember like getting in my because I grew up here in LA. So I had my car here and my mom came to the studio and he lived in Malibu at the time, this beautiful property. It was mostly like the house itself, he'll say like wasn't even that great, but he had this amazing studio with this huge lawn. So it's just like straight out of a movie where I pull up in my little like Honda Civic car, so cheeky, my first little car that I ever had, into this like big, beautiful mansion, and had a great session that day and recorded the vocals with him. And I just remember being really, I realized obviously at that point how iconic of a producer he was, right? And all the amazing accomplishments he had, and being there with my mom and doesn't just talking about music and stuff. So it was a really special day. And then he started taking me on the road, like to do a bunch of, everyone would tell you that he never says no to a charity event, right? He's like always doing the musical entertainment for a charity event. So, but then he always needs singers to sing. So I started becoming one of many singers that he would take on the road with him. So none of that had any romantic notions whatsoever. Although he did he did make it known that I was marrying the wrong person. I did get married. I got married. I was almost 24. So I was 23. And so I'd already known him for a couple of years now. I'd been done a bunch of gigs with him. And he came to the wedding and played the piano when I sang for my then husband.
We'll pause right there and we can keep listening. But isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That
he played the piano at her wedding.
Yes. I also want to know what he told her she was marrying the wrong person.
Yes.
Probably when he's with Linda Thompson at this time.
No, literally.
Or maybe that's maybe this was Yolanda.
Linda Thompson and him, I think were divorced at this time, but yeah, pre-Yolanda.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll keep listening.
And that situation didn't work out, but it was, I learned a lot, but he was just kind of always this person that I really felt honored to know and to just, I knew I never had any intentions of him producing an album for me or whatever. Music is like a whole other subject I could go into. I kind of always just in the back of my mind realized I would probably be more of an actor than I would be like a recording artist. And so we stayed friends and did a lot of gigs together and got to know each other in a lot of different circumstances. But it wasn't until after I moved back from LA, I went to New York. From New York, I did Smash for 2 years, did a TV series on CBS Scorpion for 4 years. And then it wasn't until like the last 2 years of Scorpion that we ran into each other in Palm Springs. And I was much more mature. I was 32 years old. And we had a lot of red wine.
That's how it always starts.
Yes,
That's how my babies were made.
He invited me and my sister, who I took her to Palm Springs for a girl weekend, to a tennis match because I saw that he was in Palm Springs on his daughter's Instagram. I add you. And he said, "Come to the tennis match." And I was like, "Okay." And we went, and my sister went back to our hotel, and he's like, come stay and party with a bunch of friends. There was like tons of people, and we just kept drinking wine, and it was just a very different night than all the previous years. Yeah.
Sometimes it is the right person, but the time has to be right too.
Yeah, the time has to be right. Well, and I've always was crazy about him, and not in the same way, obviously, that I could realize that I could be. And so now, of course, I'm always like, I wish I'd been with you like this whole time, whatever. But I would have never worked out because I would have probably been insane and crazy and had to go through the young 20 something years that I needed to. But it's true. It's like amazing that we've known each other as long as we have. And I'm out of breath because let me just say that when you know, but it did take me because I knew him for so long, and I loved him and I liked him. But I was really freaked out about like the age difference. I was just I was, it was just not even like that I was freaked out. It was just like, oh, this is just a fun thing. Like we've always loved each other. But he always kind of, not inappropriately, not like when he was in other relationships, but when he wasn't, he always kind of made it known that he had feelings for me or whatever. But I was always like, you're insane. Like, you're too old for me. And it's just like, now when we're together, it just is right. And it's some people are never going to get it, and we don't care. We're fine about it. It's just like, he's the best thing that ever happened to me, but he was always the best thing that ever happened to me. Like even when he was just a mentor or someone who gave me privileges of performing and giving me experience or giving me a job, right? Like he was always special to me. So just the fact that we're sharing this life together, it's like, we'll still be driving the car, and I'll like turn to him, and cause I'm like super romantic. I like, and I'll just be like, I can't believe we're together. I can't believe I'm with David Foster. And he just laughs and, like, I can't believe we're having a baby. It's just like, cause I still can't believe it. It's so cool. I think it's the coolest thing. It's like the greatest honor of my life.
Anyway, thank you for sitting down, because I think it sheds a lot of light.
I think like the fact that he always made it known, that he was into her and wanted her. I don't know. There's a part of me that, of course, wants to just be like, these are consenting adults. Let people be happy. They have a kid together. But there's also part of me that's just like, what?
I mean, here's the thing. These are consenting adults. People are allowed to do whatever they want. He grosses me out. The fact that he kind of always was into her and made it known to her. Like, it's literally like you're someone who's your dad's age, who's like your mentor, who you go on the road with, who you like perform with, who you kind of have this working relationship creepy, with, who's
boss,
also been, who has made it known to you that he's into you. And then you see him
in power.
You run into him in Palm Springs, and then he finally gets you, and he's like, come party with us, blah, blah, blah. And then one thing leads to another, which I don't know, maybe I'm looking at this through a really cynical like lens, but it's gross to me.
No, it's gross to me too. And I think that's part of the deal, right? Like that's part of the deal of marrying someone in their 70s when you're in your early 30s. Like it's not just for him, it's for like the lifestyle he has to offer and all of his accolades and all of that. And the kind of friend group that she runs in and all the stuff she does now. And it's definitely interesting to hear her take.
Yeah, I think it was fascinating to hear that he'd always been into her. Also, I think it is just like the David show. And you sign up for that because you want to be a part of it and you want to be on the David show. And that's not a relationship that I would be interested in. Like it's the Chandler show with me. That's not for me, but maybe that is for some people, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one continues for sure.
Yeah. Chrissy also put in here the infamous post where he snapped a picture of her in a bikini and was like, what baby?
Oh
that gosh. I remember you and I died over. So
yeah, he
likes him thin
for herself. Yeah, he does like him thin. No, I mean, another thing that like I just would ask my sister if you were wanting to get with someone like that is I would just be like, but don't you like look at his past? Like, do you really want this guy who like very clearly seems to be like not a great husband, not faithful?
Right. Maybe there's a dark part that's like, well, he's probably not going to do that again. He's so much older now.
Of course. I think they always think that they're the ones to change him. And and maybe he is getting to the point where he's too old to to still be going and chasing the greener grass. Who knows?
I do think it's nice that there's a good relationship between her and the kids. I think like Sarah and Aaron seem to be very like adoring of her, and they have to seem to have a great relationship, which I think speaks to the work that they've all done on their relationship and, on themselves. Like, I'm glad that their family is somewhat intact and that they, through all of this crazy trauma and honestly his terrible actions, that, that they're somewhat of a tight-knit family still.
Honestly, I just really want to get to the bottom to what these women know about Yolanda Foster that we don't know. I like that this episode is really just becoming about Yolanda, but I genuinely just want to know what this group of girls know about the Hadids and Yolanda Foster that we do not know.
Right. I know.
Like, if she really was faking Lyme disease, how did her kids have it too?
I need someone with insider tea to be DMing us more information, because I don't believe she's faking it.
I don't believe she's faking it either. I also think that Lyme disease is just one of these things that's like something that they don't really have a cure for. And so they can't, Western doctors don't really help much with it. And so people who suffer from it, it seems like, they have to get unconventional treatment, and
I think too, the symptoms are very perplexing. And they're like, they've run the full gamut of physical symptoms to mental symptoms. Like, it's just, I think it's a really complicated chronic illness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for, your time and your civil service being a part of the trial of David Foster. I can't wait to see what verdict you all render.
Yes, what verdict our listeners render. This was, Chandler, the deep dive, the walkthrough I really needed of David Foster and the women and children he left for other women. And so thank you so much for leading us through it. So interesting.
Really quick, Ben had to print this off at his office, and I do wonder if anyone at his office saw the deep dive entitled "David Foster is the worst" and the 10 pages of notes on it.
Just like the 10 pages of People article, excerpts about David Foster at the Kind Bar Company where Ben works. So funny. Okay, well, we need to Amazon you a printer, first of all. Second of all, Chandler, thank you so much for this deep dive. You guys, let us know your verdict on David Foster. We'll be back on Friday on Patreon, and we'll see you then. Bye.
See you then. Bye. Love ya.
That's all for now, folks. Don't forget, give us a 5-star review, hit us up on Instagram at PopApologists, and we will see you next week, live every Wednesday.